whole bunch of people in the suburbs and downstate, between heroin and opioids, between sort of stronger strains of these very, very deadly pharmaceutical drugs. It is an epidemic, and it's something, we passed the bill, House Bill 1, it was an opioid sort of crisis rescue bill back a couple years ago. That is helping quite a bit. We've got a guy running for Attorney General, currently our state senator, Kwame Raoul, who's going to have the ability to do more to sue some of these opioid manufacturers who are deliberately over-marketing these painkillers to folks that sort of can either start them down the road of drug addiction. Somebody ends up getting hurt in a crash, perhaps like some, one of the clients Curtis represents, and all of a sudden they end up on Vicodin, they end up hooked because it's so prescribed, and they start a vicious cycle that could potentially lead them to heroin or to other illicit activities. So we've got to make sure that we're doing a couple of things. Treating stuff directly at the source, but then also making sure that we are forming an environment of jobs and economic security such that people never turn to these things out of despair in the first place. So thank you for your comment. So, okay, so we'll go with you, Mr. Carr, and then we'll come back this way.
Good evening, Josef Michael Carr, Representative Mitchell, Mr. Tarver. Thank you for hosting this Townhall. I'm a firm believer that the city is right for rent control. Can you tell the audience a little bit about how the ban in the state of Illinois needs to be lifted before we have citywide rent control?
You want to talk about? So the question is about rent control. So currently there is a ban statewide on rent control, and there has been an effort, I think, by Representative Guzzardi to potentially lift it. That could potentially put in place a system whereby there would be more ability locally to control rent. I don't know enough about the bill to say I can take a position on it right now. I would say this: there was a concern raised by some tenants organizations in New York about how you had people who were actually incredibly wealthy living in rent-controlled apartments in a way that sort of seemed to take advantage of the system. So any sort of legislative fix, I would want to take into account that current situation in New York in a way that we don't replicate it in Illinois. But potentially could be an interesting tool. We want to talk to all the involved tenants, the organization, see how it would affect different markets in the city. At least for me personally, that's where I would be before taking a firm position.
And I haven't seen the bill myself, so I'm curious of the position, but certainly hoping to hear about it. There's a lot of high-rise and multi-unit buildings in the district, so I'd be interested in hearing both sides of the issue.
There's another young lady over here.
Yes, ma'am.
On the end of the wrap.
Good evening. My name is Herald News-Charter Schools. Couple of things. One is response to the young man that talked about African-centered education. Response to that is twofold. And I can say it because I'm educated. Okay. There has been curriculum development, and that came out of the result of the mandates. When we talk about my concern, and when we talk about the budget, increase in funds, I don't know, I haven't looked at how it is when it hit the schools that I service, that I work with, but my concern is that where the money needs to go and where the children need it the most, it doesn't happen. And the way the system is structured, there are more restrictions on those of us who try to serve the children who need the most than it is on other kids. So Walter Payton's going to get another building. More signs going to get refurbished. All of these things, but the schools that are suffering the most, I don't know how
aspect on this education funding bill. But I just want to say to you and to anyone again, look, there's no monopoly on good ideas, and certainly I don't know everything. What I need, and I genuinely need, besides you to hold me accountable, is for you to help me and understand those types of things, right? Because if it were not for this town hall, and not for me just saying that, I might not be educated in that regard. So I can tell you for me and for my office, imagine saying as a Christian as well, always feel free to reach out, always feel free to give me like those tidbits of information so that at least headed to Springfield, when we're looking at bills and things like that, we're armed with that information from the ground level, from individuals who are dealing with it on a daily basis, because that's important.
So one of the common phrases from one of my dear friends, and again, hopefully our next Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratus, the wisdom is in the room. So to back up what Curtis just said, is that we need your help, your ideas, your thoughts on how we can make this situation better. I would say one thing editorial, which is, and this is probably for the Chicago Public School Board, I guess, which is, I think there should be a real examination of the idea of the current per pupil funding system. I don't know how there is no consideration for the idea, for example, that so we lost 180,000 African Americans between 2000 and 2010 in the census. And that sort of loss ends up penalizing you in a school funding formula that is based on per pupil population. What it doesn't recognize, when we try to recognize in our state funding formula, is the idea that those who remain some are remaining because they choose to, others are remaining because they can't afford to leave. And insofar as that second part is the case, it means that those students need more wraparound services, more supplemental nutrition, more early childhood education, more after-school programs. And if you have a formula that doesn't account for that, as my read of the Chicago Public Schools formula does not currently, that is problematic. And that is something that I think the board needs to address because it would help directly with your problem and the populations you just talked about, sir. Okay. There's a question. We're going to go here and then I'll shift backwards.
Karen Getting of the Hyde Park Herald. If there is a windfall in terms of revenue for education in Illinois, will charter schools stand to benefit from that? And what are your opinions of the role of charter schools in Chicago specifically?
So I think a couple of answers to that. So the question was, will charter schools benefit? So we either, forgive me Aaron, I'll get back to you on this for sure, we either equalize or severely narrow the funding range difference between charters and traditional neighborhood funding public schools as a part of the education formula fix. So the answer is yes. To what degree, I can't answer. That would be something we have to look at analysis to go for. What I would say is this. I've got 4 charter schools in and around my district. Each of them graduate somewhere between 70 and 100% of their low-income African-American students. To me, they are schools, and I'm going to be supportive of the schools in my district, is how I'd answer that question.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't have much of a different answer. I mean, besides the fact that I was quoted as publicly advocating for charter schools, which I did, so I'll take this back now. My focus is on the children. I want kids to go to good, public, neighborhood schools. That is ideal. That is absolutely ideal. But I will be a derelict if I ignore the fact that there are charter schools that are open and operating in the district. So, my position is, and will always be, my focus is the children. The goal has to be for children to be able to look down the street and go to a safe neighborhood public school. That would have been great for my daughter instead of going all the way 40 minutes away. That would have been a great option. So that is for sure what I'm a fan of and what I'm in favor of.
Let me just add one more thing to this answer, which is that, so we've talked about the education funding formula. There's another important measure that I was chief sponsor on that the governor vetoed that I think is really important. So right now, the minimum wage for teachers in the state of Illinois is $9,000. Let me say that again. $9,000 is the current minimum wage for teachers in the state of Illinois. It was set in 1980. For perspective on that, for the music fans in the house, Prince had not founded the revolution. Thriller was not going to come out for 3 years, and I was 6 years from being born. That's the last time we adjusted the minimum wage in the state of Illinois. I passed the bill, Senate Bill 2892, that would raise the minimum wage to $40,000. What that would have also done is put upward pressure on wages for all teachers everywhere around the state. Because I have a fundamental belief here, which is we can either ask teachers to be counselors, to be parents, to be mentors, to imagine, to help our children imagine a world that they cannot yet see and believe that they are good enough to live and function in it. Or we can pay them poverty wages, but we can't do both of those things. And I think that is incredibly important for all schools anywhere in the state of Illinois. Governor Rauner vetoed it, of course, so we're going to try to override it. But I think that's part of setting the table is more investments in the schools, to the question that Val asked earlier, more investment, but then also making sure that we are paying teachers extremely well and holding everybody around the system accountable.
And a small carve-out on that, pre-K teachers earn about 58% of what elementary school and kindergarten teachers make. So it's even worse for them. So again, in what I said earlier, that early childhood education is wonderful. And the fact that we have a 26% attrition rate for pre-K teachers, we need a specific focus there as well. And that's what I'm very passionate about, I want to focus on.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm going to go with the young lady in the back. We're going to go this way, and then we'll come all the way back.
I'm sure that you probably...
Could you speak up just a little bit?
You may have touched on it earlier. My concern is about the crime rate, police brutality, and prisons. Since you work in the state, the superintendent blamed everybody, but he blamed legislation and state legislators for crime, and said that they are accountable and not the police department. The other part of that concern is that there's a philosophy built in prisons when you take that position that crime is your fault, like the shame on you.